Hey everyone, welcome to Love Your Body podcast. We are in 2023. I cannot believe it. It has been an amazing ride this past year. I wanted to kind of do a recap of just everything. So if you're new to the podcast, or you've been following along, maybe you missed some things. I know I've missed some things, like just looking back at my photos and looking back at, everything that has happened. It's just been kind of wild. And, I will say, I started my journey to bodybuilding in July of 2021. That was kind of around the time, or August, I guess. Um, and it was, I kind of had spent a few months kind of getting acclimated to everything, like the meal plan, the vitamins, my coach, working out again, like, kind of slowly progressing, right? Well, fast forward to January of 2022. And, it was very interesting because I was, grinding at work, getting Move Fit pop-ups going on, the Get Your Movement In challenge, everything that I'm doing this time, around as well. Same thing. But the mindset was still that, yes, I want to compete in a show, but it wasn't that I actually believed that I could. I still had some doubts. Because I distinctly remember being at the glamping thing with my parents over the Christmas break and everything at the end of that year of 2021. And in my mind, I was just like, there's no way. Like, I was having some issues, like, even look at myself in the mirror. I'm like, dude, like, how are you going to do this? And then finally, I mean, come around, it was like January and then into February. And I started meeting more bodybuilder type people and coaches. And they were like, yeah, like, you got a great frame. You like this. I mean, they didn't look at me as like, this is some impossible task or this is some crazy idea or notion. It was simply, yeah, I mean, I think you can, I mean, go all the way. Like, let's do this. They were just so positive. And I just remember having those workouts with different people and setting myself around in different spaces. And it was really cool to see that and to and actually believe that. And so it started kind of with that idea of, okay, I know I want to do this, I'm going to do it. But when they started, giving these positive affirmations and people that are actually in the sport, it was kind of like, okay. And it was kind of the same way with strongman before too, because I immediately remember doubting Matt when he originally said to me, hey, you should do strongman competitions. I immediately thought, oh, I'm not going to make the weight class, or what do I have to, how do I need to be able to do this or whatever. And I just never had really like considered myself an athlete, even though I had, said that I danced all my life and things like that. I'd always been put down for, thinking that I was an athlete. And so I just remember there's always that initial fear. And I had that initial fear with the bodybuilding stuff. And then when it came time for about, I would say it was like March when we ended the Get Your Movement In challenge. We had a Move Fit party. It was super cool, and we're doing that again this year. I'm doing that again and everything. And when I looked back at these pictures and stuff like that, I mean, I was working hard, I was working out, I was doing everything, but I still was kind of relaxed on the diet a little bit. I wasn't really honing in as much as I could be and things like that. So it wasn't until I went to the Nashville Fit Show Forum in April, which I'll be sponsoring this year, and also going to. So I'm going to speak at it about loving yourself and throughout. And so I'm really excited about that. And it was so just crazy because when I got up there and I saw these girls that were like doubting themselves, I was like, why are y'all doubting yourself? Like, you look great, you all this stuff. And I internally was like, I was really confident on that stage and did my routine, everything like that at X amount of weight and, all these things. But I was just happy to be there, And I remember being like, okay, literally they're having the same fear that you originally had, right? And that now you've been working at this and things like that. So it's like, okay, flip the switch, get over it. Like, we're in this, right? So it really wasn't until that day. I mean, I remember eating an alpha cookie in the car and being like, okay, tomorrow starts it. Let's go. And giving like 150%. So not just like 90% here and there, 80% or whatever. I was like, I'm going over and above, right? I'm not missing any cardio. I'm not missing any meals. I don't care if it's 11 o'clock at night and I still got to eat my chicken breast. Like, I'm doing it. So I basically gave myself that whole like that whole discipline talk of, why are you sitting here being fearful of something? Um, and I knew what the reason was because it had seemed like such a far off dream for so long. And I was like, this is your reality. Like, you're in it. You're committed. Like, you're already going to get a suit. Like, I mean, you're doing it. So like, let's go. And so that was really cool. And I just remember that flip, um, or that switch that happened. And so, like, so I guess it was like April, yeah. So May, June, July. So you fast forward, and to me being on the beach for my birthday and like still eating my meal prep and still going to get my movement in and everything like that. And it was just like I changed internally and I let go of that fear. And so, everything in the year that I had done before, the Get Your Movement in Challenge, the Move Fit parties, the training my clients, like all of these things also, kind of stay the same. But then I got some like opportunities with Shape Magazine and got to be, with the campaign with Smoothie King, and that was really special. And I got to go on Nashville Sports Talk Radio, and I got to do some speaking engagements. And so there's all these awesome things I got to do that were bucket list, and I've been manifesting that happened. But it was almost like that moment right there where I realized that I was even being fearful and that I had to have this shift. I mean, it just opened me up to so many more possibilities. And I think that we're so seasonal as humans, right? We get back into this shift with this fear. And like here lately, I have been watching entrepreneurs, friends of mine stress the heck out. Okay. Clients of mine, everybody is their stress levels through the roof. And I'm just like, guys, like, what are we doing? Like, like this is, you have been on this journey. And I remember like when I'm saying this to them, wherever I'm like, it's this fear that's lingering in the air that there's not enough time. You're not going to get everything accomplished. You've set this precedent, you set the standard, you have to you have to get there, you have to abide by it, all these things. And it's just like, okay, stop the nonsense, like breathe, like everyone just take a breath, you know, and sit for a second. Like there is no unrealistic timelines. There is no, well, there's unrealistic expectations. But the timelines of stuff, I think that we're putting this pressure on each other. It is just crazy. And there's no reason for it. So I really, when I look back at it, I'm like, okay, so why do we become fearful? From certain times it's because we're comparing ourselves to others, right? And that's like with the bodybuilding, it is so easy to do. And just to be real about it, there's times where I look at myself and I still am getting used to how my body looks now. And I love it and I'm excited about it. And it's so cool. And I feel like I should be able to celebrate it, right? But it's almost like, I don't know. It's almost like a fearful thing that, okay, well, you may lose it if you don't do exactly what you've been doing. Or, I think that's what most people feel like when they're in a healthy lifestyle regimen. And I've seen clients go through that where they're like, well, if I don't, drink my apple cider vinegar every day, like I might gain like, 30 pounds back. It's like, no, that's not what's going to have you gain 30 pounds back. You know what I'm saying? So it's almost like we get so irrational with things. But it goes back to getting out of regimen and routine. And if I've learned anything from last week's break, from clients and from taking that rest and kind of feeling sick and, still recovering from that, is that whole thing of a routine and regimen is what I thrive in. And I love that. And I believe that when you have that, that you will get more things done. You will be disciplined to get more things done. And so many people, I think, are just rolling through it, just this thing, this opportunity, this, whatever, and going all crazy and everything. And I know that my stuff seems like I'm all over the place and it's chaotic, but I really believe it's organized chaos, truthfully, because like I said before, literally doing my Get Your Movement in challenge again, like the same type of structure I did last year, like the Move It pop-ups that I have, like, sprinkle some media in there as well. Like there's a forum to it. Like there's a whole what's the word? Like recipe to it. Same with with my clients and how I structure their programming. Like everyone is individualized and everyone is tailored and everything like that. But truthfully, like, I start out everyone's assessment the same. I look at them on the same level, no matter if they've been working out or if they haven't been working out, or they were an athlete or if they weren't an athlete, or male or female, whatever. I have no prejudgments. We go into it and I see, and then I progress from there, with their plans. So, it is like once you find that rhythm and you find that routine, it is cool to rock with it. And so I think that is where when we get out of that routine, or when we like when we decide to let fear overtake us, that it's just paralyzing. And I hate that. I just hate that. And I don't I think that I have gone through that before, even with Strawman for a slight second. And then with my injury, fearing that I'd never be able to move the way that I once did, or even better, or lift weights at all. Right. I felt fear, when I went through trauma and loss, because I had a lot of people, it was almost like fear of judgment. And I had to let that go real quick, and decided to share my story about that. Um, and yeah, and I really hope. I mean, you're going to see so many people posting about, I'm talking about my Get Your Movement challenge, accountability, consistency, discipline, all these things, right? And it can feel like, oh my gosh, Danny, like I can't even, maybe you're like, I can't even walk outside for 10 minutes. You know what I mean? I can't even imagine doing a challenge. Or maybe you're like, I can't even imagine going to the gym or anything because of how I look or I feel out of place or whatever it is, all this fear wrapped around everything. So if we break it down and we sit and say to ourselves, okay, what do we want? Okay, well, you might not know what you want right now, right? But if you could sit there and try to pick that, like, so maybe it's, I want to be more comfortable in my clothes, or maybe I want to speak up more, or maybe I want to be an independent, woman, an independent man. I don't want to be financially dependent on people. Like whatever it is, whatever you're fearful of, I really encourage you to write it down, acknowledge it. Okay, own that that is what is like bothering you, like that is what's scaring you, like whatever. And from there, open your mind up to the possibility that if there was no parameters, if there was no like there was no in the situation. Like I literally was sitting there talking to my dad and he looks at me and he says, because I was talking about these like ideas that I had. And he was like, "What are you so afraid of?" And I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, I'm not afraid of anything." And he was like, "I mean, it sounds like it, or just do it." And I was like, "Well, they're not the right opportunities." And he's like, "Well, then fail." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I get what you're saying. I get where you're going with this." But he was like, "But seriously though," he's like, "What kids do you have that are gonna starve? What like house, like, like all these things." Like he pointed out, he's like, you're doing so well, like take the risk. We talked about this with Kristen on one of the last podcasts about, not being fearful, right? And I think because everybody around this time of year, there's just these high expectations and all these things that you start getting, that fear comes trickling in or whatever. And so really, like for me, I'm looking at this as just like, this is another day. This is another week. This is like, I'm still on my regimen and my routine. It didn't change. Nothing went crazy. Like, I'm not jumping from this amount of weights to this amount of weights. I'm not starting to run a half marathon. Like, I mean, there's nothing, I'm literally doing the same stuff I've been doing. Right. And that right there, I was thinking over the break that was what the scary part was, that I'm complacent. And then I realized it's not complacent, it is routine. And your routine, as my dad would say, the turtle, like as the turtle, like will get you to the finish line first, will get you to where you want to go, but you have to stay on your path. So with that, I know that it's easier said than done and it takes work. But if you can just quiet the nonsense around you and look at it plainly and say, okay, for me, for example, I, I get joy in like doing this podcast. I get joy in helping people. I get joy in going on new segments. I get joy in talking on radio talk shows. Any type of media stuff, speaking engagements. Like I live for that. I love to tell my story. I love to help anybody, and everybody, that wants to love themselves throughout movement. And so for me, it's just so funny because it's like, those are the things that bring me joy. And so really, like I say it all the time, like I want to go on Good Morning America. I want to go on a reality show. I want to go on all these different things, like, and be out there and be present in that, right? So if I can dream that big, then why would I let something with like a money stake in it, right? Like owning a gym, which I don't really want to do at this time, but like that to stop me, right? Or anything like that. So it's really just finding again the right opportunity. And for me in my life, anything that has felt forced, it's never gone well. I feel like when we try to go after something so aggressively, like there's a difference. There's a difference in going after it aggressively and a difference in like continuing to like keep it manifesting, right? So like I know for me, the things that like I put myself out there for things to happen, like the amazing things that happen from working at the resort in Vermont to, going to Bonnaroo and doing Move Fit to having a partnership with Shape Magazine and Smoothie King and all those different things, right? Like all these things, like I had to like put myself out there and be vulnerable, right? And ask the questions and maybe it was persistent in asking some of the things, but even with Connect, like her reaching out to me, like I feel like I had to be persistent in like making sure that that went through completely, right, and got my contract to be able to live there in Nashville. So it's like I was persistent, but I also in the back of my mind was like, this is going to happen. Like I will get there. And even with Bonnaroo, I mean, it didn't happen the first year, didn't happen the second year, didn't happen the third year. It happened the fourth year that I went there that finally got to teach Move Fit. Okay. The year before I was rolling up other people's yoga mats and taking them around and making sure that they got their awesome like fitness class done. Right. So it may not happen for you this year. This might not be your year, right? Everyone's like, this is my year, this whatever. Okay. And it's good to be optimistic and stuff, but like it may be that this is just the first of many awesome things to come, right? And if you stay on that regimen, if you stay on that routine, if you stay consistent, you will get there. And I really do believe that. And yeah, I mean, I'm very excited for the new year. I mean, looking back and saying that I, got to do 2 bodybuilding shows and compete in wellness. Um, and for those of you that don't know, that's more of the category with like bigger legs, more defined glutes, everything like that. And to compete in that, feel successful, and sponsor and get to spread my message and my mission, to get to I think what else was that? Oh, to move into my house, have all the renovations, like have a safe space, finally to feel like, wow, I can like spread out and like enjoy like, a bonfire and had my family over for Christmas and it was so cool. Like there's just so many amazing things with that. Like, and even the growing of clients that I have, that's been really cool. And getting in different networks and even bodybuilders, realizing that you need to love yourself throughout the journey. Cause it is very hard. It is very challenging when, you feel like you have to go that 150%, right? Well, like, how do you have grace? How do you have balance, right? Um, and you have to put yourself in corners and in spaces with other people and network and go do all these things. I mean, it's exhausting, right? Like you're thinking of so many things at so many times, but again, that goes back to like that season of time. Um, and knowing that, there's these grind times, there's these prep times, there's these maybe in your life it's different. Maybe it's like, before you have kids and then during when you have kids and then after you have kids, like it's just everyone has different seasons. And so I'm really just blessed and excited to look back at everything and that, man, there was so much that was accomplished this year. And it was hard. It was hard work and it was exhausting. And honestly, I always feel like I could have probably done more, And that's something I have to battle with is this fear, getting rid of the fear of not doing enough. Um, and and really what it was I was more selective with my time. I was more intentional with my time, and I didn't do things that I knew would be a waste, right? So for me, like being on dating apps and stuff like that seems to be like a waste for me. Um, going to I don't know. I went to a couple strongman competitions, but like going to every single strongman competition in Tennessee or whatever, like, to follow like and see some of my friends compete, like, I tried to come and like I remember I went to like like the last half of it, or I worked that morning before. Like I made it work. But again, trying to be very intentional with my time. So if anything, when you're moving forward in this year, like I said, write down whatever you're fearful of. And if you can sit there and kind of hone in on it, what it is, why you're fearful of it, and start opening your mind to the idea that you don't have to be fearful of anything. Um, if you're afraid of what people will think, who cares? If you're afraid of failure because you don't want to fail, I mean, yes, but that's part of life and that's what's going to make you stronger. If I wouldn't have quote unquote like I guess failed in getting injured and whatever, like I wouldn't have had the respect and the appreciation of where I'm at in my journey now. Um and it wouldn't be so fulfilling, as like it is now. So I really do think that with that failure will come success. But sometimes you just have to roll through it and go through it. And it is scary, and I get it. And so that's why I'm here. If you ever need to talk, if you ever need to just again like get away, listen to the podcast, message me on Instagram, whatever it might be. But guys, we're about to wrap up, yeah, the signups for the Get Your Movement In challenge. And so if you are fearful of going into a gym, if you are fearful of not having a program or a plan, I offer registered dietitian meal plans. I offer online programs alongside of the challenge. We're going to offer gold bars, a shirt, sweat towel, fight energy booster, like everything to help you feel successful to start your journey, if that's what you've been waiting on, if you've been fearful to start. And just think if I would have sat there and in that room full of women and been like all of them when they were saying that there's no way they're gonna be ready, or they were fearful, or they're just stressed out, or they don't love their body or whatever. And if I would have sat there and said like, yeah, yeah, me too, I may not have competed, right? Like I may have just not even competed, and I mean, which would have been fine too, but like maybe wouldn't be in the body that I've always dreamed of, of feeling successful in, or and less pain on my leg. And like, maybe I wouldn't have been hitting PRs like I did this year from, I just did 275 for 3 on back squat. I just did 155-pound walking lunges this morning. I did my deadlift 315 again for 2. And again, I have done more weight than this in the past, but this is a new body. This is a new body weight for me. This is a new journey for me. And it's so cool to see that no matter what might be like the routine or the consistency or whatever, instead of looking at it like, oh yeah, like I did this, before. And so this isn't anything. And like kind of like tearing myself down. It's like, no, like this is something to celebrate. And this is awesome. And I'm going to celebrate every moment of it. Every moment that I see, abs, and I see my booty growing, and like even physical attributes and things like that I was always fearful of that can never happen because of my large frame and the body that everyone told me that I had, and the placement that I had in this world. It's like, no, like, no. So cut out the fear, move forward, and I would say step with purpose and stay on your path, and you will have the most successful year you have ever done. But if you start to feel that fear coming in, or you feel like you're whatever, look back at your path, look back at what you wrote down, and remember why you first felt fearful of it, and then get yourself back on the right track. So until next time.